Ever feel like City Hall's kind of, speaking in code?
Uh-huh.
We get the headlines, sure. But what's really on the agenda at those council meetings?
Right.
Well, buckle up, because today we're going full-on detective mode, digging into Kamloops City Council meeting minutes. We've got ourselves a stack of reports here, 3 committees worth, governance, all that fun
The
stuff.
nitty-gritty.
Exactly. Safety and security, obviously important. And then livability, sustainability, the big picture stuff. So we're talking taxes, city services, you name it. We've got the inside scoop straight from your elected officials.
Yep.
Ready to see what your council's been up to. Let's dive right in, shall we?
Yep.
Governance and Service Excellence, April 16th meeting. This is where the action starts.
This is where the sausage gets made, right? This committee is where they hash out the budget, set priorities, really figure out how to keep the city running.
And with a smile,
Mhm.
hopefully. No, but seriously, one thing that jumped out at me was the Encore Senior Society situation. They wanted a full tax exemption, which I get it. They do amazing work.
Oh, absolutely. Vital services for our seniors.
But instead of just saying yes, council went with a grant in lieu.
Interesting tactic, right? It shows they're trying to support essential services, but also they've got to be mindful of that bottom line.
And it's a balancing act for sure. And that seems to be a recurring theme, right? Throughout all these minutes, it's this constant juggling act of competing needs, trying to do right by everyone with limited resources.
Exactly, and that's where things get, well, let's say lively. Take the Class 4 mill rate debate, for example.
Okay, confession time. I had to Google mill rate. Don't judge me.
Hey, you're not alone. It's basically the tax rate specifically for industrial properties, your factories, warehouses, that kind of thing.
Okay, got it. So they were just tweaking the numbers a bit.
Not quite. They went a step further, actually started revising the entire policy behind it. Not just a quick fix, they're thinking long-term sustainability of the system.
So making sure those industrial guys are paying their fair share for years to come. Smart move. Got to keep the lights on somehow. But okay, let's switch gears a bit here. Community safety, always a hot topic. The April 16th meeting of the Safety and Security Committee, that's where things got really interesting.
This is where they get into the nitty-gritty of keeping Kamloopsians safe. Crime rates, policing strategies, all that.
And one thing that really stood out to me, the Kamloops fire rescue situation. They're dealing with more and more medical calls these days, putting a real strain on resources,
Yeah, and you can't forget the toll that takes on the firefighters themselves. Those are stressful situations day in and day out.
Absolutely. These are real people. We can't forget that.
Yeah.
And the council, to their credit, they get it. They were talking about requesting more provincial funding to help manage this increased workload.
Which makes sense, right? It's not just a Kamloops thing. This trend of fire departments handling more medical emergencies, it's happening all over the province.
Bigger picture stuff, for sure. But hey, it's not all doom and gloom on the safety front. They also talked about bringing back the Block Watch program, which I think is fantastic.
Great way to get the community involved, right? They're planning a soft launch to get things going, really emphasize that community engagement aspect.
Love it. Okay. Now on to something close to my heart. Homelessness in Kamloops. The January 30th meeting of the Livability and Sustainability Committee, they really dug deep on this one.
This committee's all about the big picture stuff impacting our quality of life. Affordable housing, social services, the works.
And those January minutes, they hit hard because they discussed the point-in-time count results, remember. A minimum of 312 individuals experiencing homelessness. And it was January, the middle of winter.
Exactly. Think about that for a second. These are real people facing incredibly tough circumstances.
It's a stark reminder that those numbers on a page represent human lives.
And it's not getting any better. That number, it's a significant jump from the 2021 count. Clearly, a complex issue with no easy answers.
And it's not as simple as just like opening more shelters. One thing from the minutes that stuck with me, the debate over shelter availability criteria, it's complicated, right?
Oh, incredibly. Limited beds, diverse needs within the homeless population, funding coming from all over the place. It's a logistical and ethical maze.
Tough choices all around.
Yeah.
Speaking of tough choices, remember we were going to get to those e-scooters?
Oh, yeah, the e-scooter saga.
Well, hold that thought, folks. We're going to take a quick break, but don't go anywhere. We'll be right back with more insights from those Kamloops City Council meeting minutes. All right, we're back. E-scooters, right. That's where we left off. Everyone's got an opinion on those.
They sure do. But before we get to those zippy little things, I want to circle back to those livability and sustainability minutes January. There's some good news in there, too.
Oh, yeah. Like what?
Well, their approach to climate action grants, for one, they really spread the love around different groups, different projects.
Really? So it's not just like one big grant for one big thing.
Nope. Schools got funding. Aberdeen Elementary, for example, they had a sustainability project.
Yeah.
Then you've got organizations, Kamloops Food Policy Council, they're doing community gardens. Even a block watch group got a grant, some kind of educational thing.
Wow, that's awesome. Seeing those dollars go to work in the community, making a difference.
Right. It's not just talk, it's action. And the variety, that's key. Climate action, it's not one size fits all.
For sure.
Oh.
Oh, okay, but you tease those e-scooters. Spill the tea.
All right. So the minutes, they show council really wrestling with this one. On the one hand, you've got this potentially fun green alternative to cars, especially for quick trips, right?
Yeah, I can see it. Zip around downtown, no parking hassles.
Right. Less congestion, maybe people get some exercise. But, and this is a big but,
Uh-oh, here it comes.
safety, big time. How do you integrate these things safely with traffic, prevent accidents with pedestrians? Our sidewalks are already crowded as it is.
Yeah, I can see that being an issue.
So council, they're not rushing into anything. It's not just about jumping on the latest trend. It's about thinking it through.
Makes sense. Okay, so speaking of thinking things through, what about that permissive tax exemption policy? That sounds thrilling.
Right. Not exactly a page turner, but these kind of policies, they're the nuts and bolts of how the city runs.
Keeping the lights on, I get it. So what's the deal with this one?
Well, what struck me was their focus on fairness and transparency. They really drilled down into the details, who qualifies for an exemption, how you apply, all that, making sure it's clear, accessible, above board.
So not just handing out exemptions like candy.
Exactly. It's about accountability. And of course, it comes back to that balancing act, right? Every dollar exempted is a dollar that can't go to roads, parks.
Or those e-scooters everyone's talking about. Okay, I had to. But seriously, it's all connected.
It is. Speaking of connections, remember those community conversations the governance committee talked about? Getting citizens more involved?
Oh, yeah, that's huge. I think they even mentioned using that online platform. He's talked Kamloops. Yeah.
They did. Smart move. Reach a wider audience, get more voices heard, and they're not just collecting feedback for the sake of it. The minutes show they're actually listening.
Oh, yeah. What kind of stuff are people saying?
Well, traffic safety, that came up a lot. Active transportation, affordable housing, the usual suspects.
So they do anything about it?
Seems like it. They talked about putting money towards more bus shelters, making the stops more accessible, directly addressing what they're hearing.
Which makes a big difference, especially come wintertime.
Eh?
Okay, before we get completely sidetracked, let's loop back to those livability and sustainability minutes. That social and community development report, that's going to be a hefty one. What's the gist?
It is, but what impressed me, their commitment to data. They're not just throwing darts at a board here, they're looking at the numbers. Homelessness, they looked at the point-in-time count, the effectiveness of existing programs, all that.
So making sure their decisions are based on, like, evidence, not just gut feelings.
Exactly. Data-driven decision-making, that's the name of the game. And it's not just this report, it's a recurring theme. Crime stats, pilot programs, climate initiatives, they're looking at the hard data.
Which honestly makes me feel better. Informed decisions, that's what we want. Now, about those fire crews and all those medical calls.
Right, so it's not just a Kamloops thing, like we said. It's a trend, province-wide, maybe even bigger. Fire departments, they're becoming more and more involved in medical emergencies.
Something to think about. Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here. What's the big takeaway? If our listeners remember one thing from this deep dive into City Hall, what should it be?
That local government, it's not some abstract thing, you know? It's real people making real decisions that affect our daily lives. These minutes, they prove that.
Every debate, every dollar spent, it has a ripple effect.
Exactly. And just as important, these minutes, they're a call to action. We have a voice, every single one of us.
It's true. These minutes, they're like a crash course in local government, you know?
They really are. And you know what? It's easy to forget that those folks making the decisions, they're just people too.
Right. Our neighbors dealing with the same potholes and whatever else we complain about.
Exactly. But they're the ones making the calls, trying to find solutions. And these minutes, they show just how much goes into it.
It's like that saying, laws are like sausages. It's better not to see them being made.
Yeah, but in this case, seeing how it's made, it's kind of fascinating. Maybe not always pretty, but hey.
Democracy in action, right? So, if our listeners take away one thing from this whole deep dive, What should it be?
That local government, it's not some big, scary monster in the closet. It's about us, all of us, figuring things out together.
And those meeting minutes, they're like the instruction manual we never got, so go check them out.
Exactly. See what your council's up to. You might be surprised what you learn.
And who knows, maybe even feel inspired to get involved. Because, hey, that's how we make Kamloops even better.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
And on that note, that's a wrap on another episode of The Deep Dive. We'll be back soon with more fascinating journeys into the information that shapes our world. Until then, stay curious, Kamloops.